Thank you, Rosie. Okay, good. At least I know that this is working now on here. Good. Right. Okay. Next thing I want to do now is address Gary's point. So let me go over to here. Gary says, how important are titles for photographic images? I've always maintained that the image should stand up for itself and that titles are an afterthought. But I recently saw some images where the titles gave the images an entirely different framework and caused me to reassess the images that I saw. So in this instance, the title and the image were intertwined. What do other people think? Okay, well, there's another one for the comments as such. Do you love finding titles for your photographs? Do you get horrified by do you have 10,000 photos called Untitled 1, Untitled 2, or just img_1476.jpg, Are titles important? Yeah, leave me a comment. Let me know whether you think. I suppose then, now to go back to what I was talking about earlier with Maggie. For Maggie, titles are extraordinarily important. In fact, very often the title comes first. You might remember in that picture I showed you earlier. In fact, let's just so in this picture here, Maggie has a jar full of title ideas. See the First Sky, I can see written there. I don't think you've actually made that piece yet, Maggie, have you? But I think really, it's coming down to a number of things. Well, it's two primary things. One is the context in which the photo is going to be viewed. The other is how you are with words and whether that's a part of how you do your art or craft. So if we go back to the context, talked a little bit before about the notion of these photo sites where there's kind of online competitions. Every day there's competition, and what happens is you shove in your photos and there's crowd viewing of them. There's hundreds or thousands of people going through voting on photos, and the photos that get the most votes come out the top and win whatever prizes. Now at that point, people are scrolling through hundreds of photos at a time, and they're not looking at titles. Titles don't come up. At that point, it is purely the image. Does the image stand in its own right? And really, does the image stand against the title of the competition? So if the competition is blue and you've shoved in a picture which is predominantly red, it's probably not going to do very well. Even if it's a fantastic picture, it's just the wrong picture for that competition. So in those cases, the titles have kind of been selected for you. So is it about the image, or is it about the words that go with the image? Let's say you were having an exhibition, and you can fill this gallery space. You've got 24 of your photos being beautifully framed up. What titles do you put with them? Are they just untitled 1 to 25, or are you putting something with them? Now, the first thing we tend to do is maybe it will, if these are landscape photos, we'll put the place. This was taken in the Peak District. This was taken in the Scottish Highlands, or this was taken in Bordeaux, or whatever it is. Doesn't really matter. We'll put the place. If it's portraits of people, we might put their name. But depending on what you put on it, has a profound effect on the way people will interpret it. Now, I did this quite deliberately about, just give you an example here. 9 years ago, I was artist in residence at the Wigtown Book Festival. And what I did was over the course of the 10 days of the festival, I took 173 photos of authors, locals, visitors, all staring moodily into the camera, no smiles allowed. And I was just doing headshot, black and white portraits. And at the end of each day, when I've done on average, 20, 30 photos, I would print them out and stick them to the walls of the space that I've been given. And at the end of it, there was 173 photos around the walls of people staring at you when you walked into the room. Now, what I did was I put everybody's name underneath the photo, got a marker, printed out, scribbled down Pete, Sheila, whatever. But I also asked everybody to give me the name of a well-loved book. And I also wrote that underneath. And what happened there was the title of the book sometimes caused you to reassess your idea of who it was you were looking at. Because when you look at a portrait of somebody you don't know, you are looking for all these little clues. Your brain is going into a very primal thing. Is this person friend or foe? Are they going to help me out? Are they part of my tribe? Are they a danger to me or to my family or to my tribe? And on a very instinctive level, we start making judgments. But when all you've got is a face looking at you without a smile, you start looking for other things. So you're looking at, you can just see the collar of their shirt coming out. So does it look like an expensive shirt, or is it just a cheap t-shirt? You're looking at how well kempt are they? Have they brushed their hair? Have they got makeup on? Have they sort of trimmed their jowls or smoothed their beard, or are they clean shaven? And all these kind of things cause you to make a kind of instant judgment about them on some level or another. But then if you're given a second piece of information, that second piece of information is either going to reinforce that idea or it is going to undermine that idea. And this second piece of information in this case was the title of a well-loved book. Now, in one case, for example, there was so David's put up The Hobbit as his well-loved book. And you look at him and he's kind of looks like a jolly fellow with a round face, and you go, well, he even looks a bit like a hobbit. Doesn't surprise me, and it reinforces that idea. And then there's this other one where you see this guy who's this sort of big, beefy biker type guy with a beard and scowly face and a leather jacket, and you think, oh, he looks a bit terrifying and all the rest of it. And he's put Black Beauty, a book about a horse from childhood, it's one of these childhood favourites. And you go, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And now you've seen that, it may be you start to reassess. Or somebody else has got, you've got this very gentle, feminine-looking woman who's got Bravo 20, which is, about the SAS and American equivalent of sort of Navy SEALs type thing, and you go, oh, again, I wasn't expecting that. And because you've now got this other bit of information, you now look back at that face and reinterpret it with this new layer of information. So that happens with people all the time. Same thing can happen with anything. So, for example, right, let me show you this. All right, what's this? So, I could take a photo of this, and I could quite straightforwardly call it a ring. And you go, okay, that's a ring, fair enough. What if I take that same photo, and we look at that photo, and I say, Celtic knotwork? And you go, wow, well, there you go. There's little bits of, there's patterning on it, Celtic knotwork. So now I'm drawing attention to the patterning on it rather than drawing to attention specifically about the fact that it's round and it goes on a finger. What if I have a photo of this and I say cheap silver? This ring costs £10. You go, oh, okay, what's that telling me? Is that telling me you're a cheapskate? If I show this ring and I say it's a wedding ring, and it is my wedding ring. It fits on this finger. It is my wedding ring. When Maggie and I got married 25 years and a day ago, we were unemployed, had very little money. It was very much a budget wedding. And the wedding rings that we have were little £10 cheap silver Celtic knotwork rings. And they're incredibly special to us. Just as special to us, if not more special to us, than it would have been if we spent several hundred or even thousands of pounds on amazing gold wedding rings. These represent who we were at the point we got married. So there you go, there's a different story. But if I didn't tell that story and I just had a picture of a ring that said cheap silver wedding ring, you might form all sorts of ideas about, well, who would do that? Are they a cheapskate? Are they just, pulling a fart? You have a different set of judgments. So the words that are being used, or if I hold up this ring and we have a picture of a ring and I say, and in the darkness bind them. Well, anybody who's read Lord of the Rings will recognise that as the one ring to rule them all. So at that point, you're making a reference to a novel. But anybody who hasn't read Lord of the Rings or watched any of the movies and doesn't know that phrase is going straight over their head. So the fact is, whether I'm saying and in the darkness bind them, or I'm saying cheap silver, or I'm saying wedding ring, or I'm saying Celtic knotwork, all of these things change how you are perceiving that ring. So what I wanted to do, actually, Gary, as you raise this question, let's stick up your photo, the photo that you put in last week. Now, what you called this one was surprise view, in quotes, in the High Peak District. So I'm assuming surprise view is the name of the place, and it's in the High Peak District, sort of central the UK, or central England really, so Derbyshire. So it's very much a geographical name. But I want you to consider for a moment the idea of how you might, what would happen if we named this something else. So we could call this a grove of silver beech, because silver birch, sorry, not silver beech, silver birch, because if I recognise my patterning correctly, these are silver birch trees. And a grove, or a line, there's layers of it, so I'll go with the grove. So a grove of silver birch. So at this point, it's not about the place, it's about the subject. However, supposing we called it emerging. There's fog. The bits in the background are more lost in the fog than the bits in the foreground. So there's a feeling, if you call it emerging, you immediately get that sense of the trees coming out of the fog. By contrast, supposing you called it retreating or disappearing. Well, now we look at the fog and we feel that the fog is coming in and enveloping it. So we're changing the mood. Call it haunting. Oh, well, now we're thinking about the spooky nature of it. What if you called it winter stillness? Well, now we're really drawing our attention to the fact that there are no leaves on the trees. It's winter stillness. It doesn't seem to be blowing from one side to another. There's a fog. There's a quietness to it. Or supposing you called it anticipation. Oh, anticipating what? Now we're looking at it with an idea of what are they waiting for? What's going to happen next? So you can see that whatever title you use is, without doubt, affecting the way we are looking at the photo. So the question is, as with all the other things I talk about in photography, which is what is the story you are trying to get across? And what is it about your photography which is either enhancing or detracting from that story? And just as the lighting in VG's parrots were detracting from the beautiful colours, but the smile in her sister-in-law's face is adding to the warmth of the person. So the title too can add or detract from. Now, you can get to a point whereby you can come up with some really obscure thing and just everybody kind of goes slightly blank or glazy-eyed, accuses you of being a bit too arty-farty for your own good. But again, it kind of depends on your audience. Some people will react. Some people, it's like poetry or prose. Sometimes we want a little bit of extra layer to what we're doing. But the other bit to this, though, is how comfortable are you doing this? Not all of us are poets, I find words... I'm a talker, I'm a chatter, fine, we can sit down over a cup of coffee, or you can watch my podcast and I can blether on for hours. But I'm not poetic in the way that I speak. Now, my wife, by contrast, the words she uses, if you read her blog posts, you read my blog posts, they're kind of chatty. They're just a slight variation on the way that I speak anyway. Maggie's blog posts are more prose. They are rich. Each sentence you feel you can unpack. Each sentence has layers of meaning. Are beautiful to read. And the titles she comes up with for her pictures are also incredibly beautiful and poetic, and they make you stop and think and rethink about what you're doing. But that's the way she creates, and she's developed this over the years in a way that I haven't. So if I tried to come up with interesting poetic titles for my photos, they would just seem a bit naff, to be honest. So I don't tend to bother, but could well be that I'm missing a trick. So, does that answer your question, Gary? It depends. It depends on who your audience is, it depends on how your pictures are being viewed, and it depends on how comfortable you are creating titles for them. I mean, there's no doubt there are some photographers out there who have the title before they go out and get the photo. They've got it. It might be a line from a book, or it might be a song, or it might just be a collection of words that struck something with them. And now they want to go out and create a photo which embodies that story. So they've got the story first, and then the photo comes second. Rather than with most of us, we take the photo and then we go, what do I call it? I don't want to just have another untitled number 479, thank you. So, probably not answering your question, probably giving you some more questions, but that's okay. Hope you find that interesting, Gary. So, I'll flick back. I'll just have to stick my pad back on again and see if we've got any more comments. Okay, where have we got? Okay, Stacey says, yes, I believe it tells you what's in the shot. So that's about the titles. VG, thanks, Kim. Truly great feedback to work upon. I barely noticed that whites of the eyes were showing up more after you mentioned it. It's only the white that I see now. It kind of is. It's one of those things you don't notice it at the time, but once you sort of do see it, you kind of can't unsee it. Rosie says, I give my favourite shots a title, especially if they're for sale in the gallery, either as a framed print or as a greetings card. It makes it much easier for customers to reorder. Well, absolutely. I mean, there's the practical side of it, without a doubt. But I suppose there's that notion of whether you say, rubber ducks 1 to 4, or whether you're coming up with, deep yellow plastic scourge of society, or environmental impact, or there's different ways of doing it. Maggie chips in, maybe it depends on the why of the photograph rather than the obvious subject matter. Okay, now I like that. That's interesting. So I mean, Gary, let's run on Maggie's notion for a moment. Let's flip back to your trees. You've taken a photo of the trees, you've given the name of the trees, the place, or, we talked about the what they are, but that notion of the why, and this is going back to the why did you take this photo in the first place? It's not just the case of it looked interesting, because there was something about it that looked interesting. There was an idea behind the photo. Even if it was only happened while you were out there, you didn't necessarily have to have that idea before you went, although you might have in this case. But when you're there, there's a reason you pulled out your camera. There was something you were trying to capture. What was it? The why of the photo. Why did you take this photo? And maybe if your title is somehow getting in there and describing the why of the photo, then that is what's really adding that extra level of depth to it. That's a brilliant comment, Maggie. Thank you. I appreciate that. If you found this useful, let your friends know and hit subscribe.